the Rinkside Report. I'm Caitlin Roche with my co-host Rob Staggenborg. Today we have a very special guest joining us who's been in the broadcasting industry for over 30 years, more famously known at ESPN and SportsCenter. Please welcome Neil Everett. Neil, thank you so much for joining Rob and I today. Today we just want to talk to you about your career and how you've developed as a writer and a public speaker. And you're from Portland, Oregon, but raised in Spokane, Washington. You fell in love with sports and writing at a very young age. And around that time, you played both varsity basketball and in football. You also had the title of King of the Cutback Block. Went on to law college in Salem, Washington, and then the University of Oregon. And then that's when you found your start in broadcasting at KST in Oregon. Can you share with us some highlights about your time in Washington and Oregon?
Well, you've done your homework. I appreciate that. That's the first step to be, that's an important thing to do. And no matter what we're doing in this business is to do your homework. So although you did say Salem, Washington, and it was Salem, Oregon.
Salem, Oregon.
Okay. But still, that's pretty good. You got 99 out of 100.
Thank you.
My mom was an English teacher and my stepfather who raised me was a basketball coach. So I think we're all gifted with something that maybe we're able to do better than other things. And I think the DNA that my mom handed me was an ability to write well, or well enough that I could use that writing and I could be on a school newspaper. And I could do stuff for the yearbook. And back in those days, I graduated high school in 1980. So we didn't have campus radio. We didn't have campus television like some of the high schools do now. But I think the first thing for young people out there, if this is something you want to do, one, you have to be able to write. And so once you've decided that, yeah, you think you can write, then it's like, okay, what opportunities are out there for me? And at the high school level, you need to take advantage of those opportunities. And then obviously at the college level, you need to take the classes that allow that skill set to grow. And then at the same time, you look for opportunities at the college level because there's a lot more than at the high school level. Now you've probably got a campus radio station or a campus TV station. You've got clubs or opportunities within a journalism school like University of Oregon, where you can meet like-minded folk. And then the most important class I ever took in college was an internship, and I did several of them. And I interned at TV and in radio, and that's where you really got, and they're paying you $5 an hour. And your hours are horrible. You're not doing it for the money. You're doing it for the opportunity to be in a building and actually smell what work smells like. These people that I'm with, this is their job. I'm an intern. I'm so happy to be in this building. And that's where the bug really caught me. And my advice is, if you're an intern, when that internship ends, if you love that job, then you want them to love you. And so they're saying, Caitlin, when do you graduate? Okay, we're going to be back in touch with you. In May of, you get back in touch with us because we will find a spot for you because you are that good of an intern. So it's really upon the student to leave a lasting impression if that's what they want to do. Now, I'm sure some kids get to their internship and they're like, oh, geez, I don't want any part of this. Look at these hours are horrible. These people are horrible. I don't want this. In my case, I wanted it. And I actually turned my internship at a radio station into a job in Maui, which then led to my getting into athletic administration on Oahu, which led to me getting into television, which led to ESPN. So I didn't plan it, but I had a plan.
And you were working full-time at Hawaii Pacific for 15 years. And while you were doing full-time work, you then got that job at ABC, the affiliation, KITV as a news writer, and then moved up to sports anchoring. So that's just amazing that you were able to do both, have a full-time gig and also work your way to what you actually really wanted to do. And at ESPN, you took an interview, but then you got turned down the first time you did it. And then the second time around is when you got it. So I guess another piece of advice I'm asking for you is what do you say when someone turns you down in this sports media world? I know you're going to hear no a lot, but how do you bounce back, or how did you bounce back and keep working towards where you are now?
Well, we started this conversation with me congratulating you on the homework you had done. And to answer your question, the first time I went back to ESPN to interview, I hadn't done my homework. And so I failed that interview because of my shortcomings. I thought I could just roll into town in Bristol and have this cool Hawaiian thing, and they were going to fall all over themselves and hire me. Well, I fell all over myself in the interview process. I wasn't, in Hawaii, we didn't do a lot of Major League Baseball unless there was a Hawaii player playing for a team. And so when I got to Bristol for my interview, and they gave me a mock sportscast to do, I was looking at teams that I wasn't familiar with the players. And I'll never forget, there was Juan Encarnacion, and I could not spit his name out to save my soul. And at the ESPN level, you can't make those mistakes. When you're at the high level like that, there's very little room for error, especially in a live broadcast, and especially in an interview process. So I really kicked it, and I knew I'd kicked it, and I was really kicking myself, because I left that interview and I said, I'm not getting that job. I wouldn't have hired me. And I went back to Hawaii. And the thing about Hawaii, it's small enough and prideful enough that Hawaii as a whole knew I had gone to ESPN for that interview.
Yeah.
And so now when I came back and I wasn't packing to go back to ESPN, everybody knew that I had failed that interview, or that ESPN had decided not to hire me. I didn't run around and broadcast it that I had screwed it up. It was more like I didn't get the job. But a year later, I was blessed enough that they gave me a second opportunity. They said, we saw something. And so now this time I really did my homework. I scoured those baseball box scores and really felt, you walk down a dark street once, and you walk down it the second time, you got a better idea where you're going. And so the second time I really nailed it. I honestly thought, Caitlin and Rob, I thought they were going to hire me before I left the building. That's how proud I was.
Yes.
What I'd done.
I love the confidence.
Oh yeah. Now I was confident. I'd done my homework. I knocked it out of the park, and it was a whole nother year before they called me. And so now I was back in Hawaii, and now when people would look at me, they just kind of go. And the other thing was, hey, wherever you're out, you're at a bar, or we're here or there, and you turn on your own television, there's Sports Center, and I'd be looking at it like, oh God, I was so close, and I really thought I got it the second time, and so I couldn't even watch it. I couldn't watch it. I couldn't. I'm like, oh, turn it off. I was watching anything but Sports Center, which is that's a tough thing to ask, a sports fan not to watch, because that's the show of shows. Sure. But fortunately, a year later, I got called back, and that was 21 years ago, and it's been a real blessed existence for me.
And during your 20 plus years at ESPN, you've covered and seen obviously so many historic moments. Can you share with us a couple moments, or your favorite moments, or interviews and interactions that you've had with pro athletes?
Oh, there's so many. And I'll tell you the thing too, is since we came out to LA, I've got to interview a lot of like movie stars, and and everybody's got everybody has a sports connection, and even not having a sports connection is a connection. But wow. Well, the first thing that comes to mind is back east, that one time they said, hey, you're going to go interview Bill Walton. He's on our team. He's part, and I'm like, oh my God, Bill Walton, my favorite player when he was a Trailblazer, and I was in Portland. And Bill Walton has since become a friend. So that is a blessing. And my wife is friends with Bill's wife. And, I've had dinner at his house, and I've had lunch at his house, and he texts me, and I'm still a 16-year-old kid whenever I'm around him. I can't believe it. Bill and I are talking about cycling, and he's giving me, here, use this cream, and I'm like, okay, you know what I mean? I'm getting rash advice from Bill Walton, and I'm like, how great is this? So that's one of the biggest blessings. so many people back east, so many, just the people that I met, Scott Van Pelt and Steve Levy and John Anderson and Chris Berman and Linda Cohn and all these people that I become friends with. And then we came out west, and a couple of the stories in the last 11 years. One was I interviewed John Wooden, and I think it was Coach Wooden's last television interview. So
Wow.
so that was special. The night that Muhammad Ali died, I was on the air, and we went all night. And that's one of those things where you're chronicling history, and so you'll never forget where you were, and you're speaking about and speaking to people about an icon that Ali was, and so you feel like you're knee deep in history. So that was special. And then I just think some of these movies, I'm sitting next to Jeff Bridges, and I'm just, or Denzel. I remember Denzel. I went in and I introduced myself, and I said, "I'm Neil Everett." And he goes, "I know who you are.
Oh yeah.
I watch you every night." And I'm telling you, man, I about peed myself. I was so excited. So so that kind of thing is it's been such a blessing. My memory isn't as good, but one thing I have done is I've taken a sheet of paper over the years, and anytime I interview somebody that is of that ilk, I jot it down. So when I've really lost it, I'll be able to look at that list and say to my nephew or somebody, "Hey, I interviewed Jeff Bridges or Michael Keaton, and that was cool."
Absolutely.
Neil, real quick, again, I want to first of all thank you for being on the show. And you and I are kind of cut from the same cloth because I'm a writer. I came out of high school. I got a job in the military. I wrote, for the Stars and Stripes. I did all that grunt work. So when you talked about the writing, you're really after my heart. And Caitlin and I have this discussion all the time that the art of writing is timeless, and you can never be good. It's something you always have to hone. And I think a lot of young people think in this Instagram world, they could walk right out of college, walk into ESPN and be on the air. And it doesn't work like that. So talking about the writing, I thought was really important for young people. That's a fundamental skill that a lot of people that's being lost today, don't you think?
Well, yeah. And I think, the opportunity for the young people to express themselves through the written word is far greater than when you and I were of that age, because you had the newspaper. That's it, pretty much. And maybe you could get a radio gig where you're able to express stuff you've written, but the internet, what was that? And now with blogs and out there, the internet is such a vast area. So I think to your point is, a lot of young people, I want to get on the air and tell everybody what I think. Well, why do I care what you think? You know what I mean? Like, who are you? But if you establish a body of work through your writings, a columnist. Stephen A. Smith started out as a columnist, so he was a writer for the the Philadelphia newspaper. So he had a body of work before he became his opinions became such that he can have his own show and all that. So I think for the young people, you've got to find your voice, and then you've got to share your voice through the written word. And Bill Simmons is a great example. Here's a guy who just wrote. He just wrote 15,000 words on Red Auerbach, and people started reading it, and now Bill sold his a company for $20 million, and he's got a podcast, and he talks about the NBA and all that, and he's got a following. But it all started with you can't just say, "I want to be the next Bill Simmons," not unless you're willing to do the work. He did the work. He did the writing, caught ESPN's eye. Then now he's at ESPN. He's writing. Now he's on TV. Now he leaves and he's writing, and he's always writing. And so that's one thing I admire about him. And it doesn't even have to be that you agree with what somebody's writing. It's just that they're putting in the work. And in fact, you don't want to agree with everything everybody's written. I read stuff all the time. I'm like, oh, I don't know if I agree with that, but it's not. It's always good to hear other points, because that expands your own mind and your own base that leads you to write about, I read this, here's my thoughts. And then all that can lead to later on, where then you can be in front of the camera and you can share your opinion, and you can share and debate, and people be like, I know who that is, or I know who she is. I've read some of her work.
Love that. And going back to your roots, you recently have received a really special honor from the University of Oregon. You were inducted into the 2020 Hall of Achievement and had some really great people speak really highly of you. What does an award like that mean to you?
Oh, that was that was really cool. What was really cool was hearing the people speaking on my behalf, and it was my sister, and it was Scott Van Pelt, and it was Kenny Mayne, and it was Rob DeMello, who was a young man from Hawaii who did the work. He was my intern, and now he's the #1 sportscaster in Hawaii. So those types of things, and a high school friend of mine who I worked on the high school newspaper with. So all these things come back around, and it's the people that I surrounded myself with, and the work that I did that lead to an honor like that. So that's what it means to me. It's confirmation that that people recognize the work that you've done. And especially because, listen, I was not a good student at U of O. Okay, I was not a good student at all. So listen, nobody would have taken that action that I was going to be in the Hall of Achievement had they been given future odds 20, 30 years ago, whatever, 40 years ago, whatever it was. Nobody would have, no book would have even allowed that bet to be placed, because those odds would have been long. But I'm very humbled to have been enshrined into that with that group of people.
And one question I had, in my experience, a lot of people involved the media. You're the guy holding the microphone, but boy, there's a whole army of people behind you. Who are some of those unsung heroes that you feel like the viewers never really hear about, but they're the guys that make it work? The producers. I mean, who are those guys that you work with all the time that don't get any credit at all?
Well, yeah, I mean, the producers, the directors, the assistant producers, the assistant directors, the stage crew, the person running the teleprompter, the researchers, all these people. And the thing about our LA office, Rob, is that in Bristol, there's so many people. There are 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 people back in the day. We'd have a show meeting, and you'd sit in, and it'd be a room of 12 people. Well, I knew Scott Van Pelt was in there. That meant I was doing the show with him. And okay, Sarah's going to be our producer tonight. I haven't worked with her for a while, and that's Jim over there. Jim's the director, I'm pretty sure. The graphics guy, I don't know who he is or she is, and so there wasn't, listen, everybody's still a pro, so it all comes together, and you do a solid show. But in Los Angeles, it's the same people every night. And so there's a camaraderie that builds up between you, the director, the assistant director, the researcher, the floor crew. I know all the floor crew by name. Those are friends of mine. And so that I think when the camaraderie is even tighter, the show will be tighter. And so those are really listen, Stan and I and Linda out in LA, we get to be in front of the camera, but boy, that all it takes is a flip of a switch and we're in the dark. So so the men and women that do that job are really the they're the bones of the operation, and the bones and the blood. So
absolutely. So Neil, I can't find you on Twitter, but I can find multiple parody accounts in your name.
I don't know what that is. I don't know why people think that. People think that's funny to do parody accounts.
I don't get it either. And there's not much content. I'm like, why do people even do this? But along with these parody accounts, I also have found a couple articles that talk about your potential leave from ESPN after 21 years and your contract coming to an end this summer. So what's your future looking like? You're going to move back to Hawaii, maybe go chill up north in Oregon, or you thinking about staying in LA, make for a network change? What's in the future for you?
Yeah, I don't know. That's, that ball is in play right now. Like my future is kind of one of those foosballs, and it's like, and I'm bouncing back and forth, or like I'm like the hockey puck off the boards. I mean, it's yeah, I don't know what's going to happen. So ideally, I'll be able to stay at ESPN for a while longer because I really enjoy the job. I really enjoy the people. I think my fastball is still popping.
Yeah.
And I'm not ready to say goodbye. And if I had to say goodbye, I would be sad to say goodbye, but I would also know, wow, what a blessing it's been to have the run that I've had, and change is inevitable. And listen, I'm already so fortunate. I'm keeping my fingers crossed that I can remain fortunate, but I'm going to be okay no matter what happens. So, but yeah, that's all in play right now, and really, it's really up in the air, and so that's
I would just say, with a guy with your experience, there's got to be a school newspaper out there that would love to have you.
I would hope so.
Love you.
There you go. Yeah, something will work out, and you know what? Everything's already worked out. So
absolutely. Rob, any other questions you have for
just
Neil?
real quick. I mean, we kind of talk big picture items. What do you think the media is going to be like? What's sports media going to be like in 5 years? I mean, it's changed so much. What's it going to be like in 5 years?
Yeah, that's interesting. Sports Center used to be appointment viewing, and that was before the internet, and now there's so many. I mean, the young people, the Caitlins of the world, watch TV on their phone, and I can't even imagine watching something on my phone. I remember I just interviewed Chris Pratt, and so they said, hey, we're going to send you the movie, his new movie to watch, and they're like, and I'm like, you're going to send it so I can watch it on my computer? And they're like, yeah, and I'm like, no, I'm not watching a movie on my computer unless I'm stuck on an airplane. And then I'm going to watch it on the little thing that they give me in the airplane on the seat. You know what I mean? So it's just different generations. But the newspaper in general is dying. I still get the LA Times delivered. So that's your first point, Rob, is, you just hate to see the newspaper go, because there's something about the feel of the paper and having that in your hands. And I still use that for research every night when we're doing the Sports Center show, to see what the standings are. And yeah, I could go online, but now I don't know if they've been updated from that noon game. So the Cleveland and Minnesota played earlier today. So does that mean Cleveland's 7.5 out, or were they 6.5 out and then they lost? You know what I mean? I don't know when that's been updated. The morning newspaper, I know when that was updated. That's from as of last night, unless there was a late game. And then they'll say, hey, this does not include the Dodgers Padres game, which ran late. So the sports in the newspaper is, it's probably going to, it's the way the newspaper goes, the sports in the newspaper is obviously going to go. I just think there's going to be more things on the net, and there's, people are cutting the cords to watch the shows on TV. It's an interesting time. Live events are clearly where it's at. That's where the focus is, on live sporting events, because then you can incorporate some of your talk and some of your highlight shows within those events, be it the lead up to the game, halftime of the game, now the post game. You attach a Sports Center after a big game, a Scott Van Pelt show, or Stan and I coming on right after, the Bucks, Hawks, or the Clippers and the Suns, and you roll right into that, and it kind of makes it like, oh, that's all part of the game, and the people who are watching it, you want to keep that audience. So I think that's probably the most concise answer to your question. Is I think you'll see shows being attached more to live events, because live events are where it's at for most of the viewers.
And just a real quick follow-up, I mean, what do you think about people like me and Caitlin, who are podcasters? Do national media, do you like that? Do you not like that? I mean, you hear guys doing it in their bedroom, and that's what they kind of said with rap music. It exploded when people were able to start making rap music on their computers and able to do mixing, and the whole thing changed. I'm just wondering, is that any concern? Again, our show's small, but I mean, there are bloggers out there that are making huge impressions. And how does the network look at that?
Well, I don't know how the network looks at that, but I think it's, they're very aware of that. And I think that's when they're scouring the landscape, and when they see somebody who knows what they're talking about. And, here, for example, let's just say, take the NHL. I mean, here, ESPN has gotten back into the hockey business. So ESPN is going to be looking for hockey content. Okay, what hockey content is out there? Well, here's this podcast of these two folks. Let's check it out. And here's this guy who used to play hockey. He's on a podcast. Let's check that out. And let's see if that fills a niche or a void that we might have in our programming. And because, I mean, listen, we could have done this without being on camera, but on camera now you've got an element where you can put it on TV, and you put some bells and whistles, and you give it a little production, and a wipe here, and a full screen here, and some graphics here, and all of a sudden, and all you got to fill is 23 minutes for a half an hour show, and you've got, boom, here we go. There's one show. We did one show right here, and we haven't even talked about hockey. So you know what I mean? So that's it. So I think it goes with what we talked about, where you stand, and how you want to present yourself, and do you have a take, and do you have strong takes, and do you have a voice, which gets back to the writing, because the voice comes from your writing, and vice versa. The writing gives you your voice. So I think that's where it comes from. Like, if in your case, it's, you want to have a strong open that's like, whoa, grabs your attention. Well, did you hear what this guy just said? He's going to tell me 5 reasons why Vegas is going to come back and win these 2 games against Montreal. I want to hear this, and for the hockey fan. So I think I think that there's eyes and ears out there that are watching everything, not just Big Brother.
Well, Neil, thank you so much for your time. It's truly been such a pleasure and an honor having you on the Rinkside Report with us this week. And I can't wait to see where you take your career, whether it's with ESPN or somewhere else. I know I'll follow you wherever you're going.
Who are we picking? Who's gonna be in the Stanley Cup Final? Let's go. Let's throw that out there.
Take some picks. Okay, I'll take a pick. I'm saying Vegas, New York. I think that's gonna be it. I think we'll take the pick games when they comes, but I'm saying that's who's making it. I'm saying Vegas coming back, and we'll see what happens. What are you thinking, Neil?
Well, I've kind of got a soft spot for Montreal because of Carey Price, and at those NHL Player Awards like a year or 2 ago, when he brought the young boy up on stage who I think he'd lost a parent, and his act of his kindness and generosity to that little boy stuck with me, and I said, I'm gonna always root for that guy. But I like Vegas because it's West Coast and all that, but I really have a soft spot for Montreal. And then Tampa Bay, I know John Cooper a little bit. He's a great guy, and Tyler Johnson's from Spokane, so I got to root for him. So I got 2 guys on Tampa Bay. I don't have an affiliation with the Islanders as much, although I got some friends who that's their team.
Oh yeah.
So I think I'm looking at Montreal, Tampa Bay. So you and I are going. We're going at it, Caitlin.
Okay.
I'll tell you what. I'm going to throw another wrench. I'm going to say Montreal, Tampa, because Tampa, they're the defending champions, and until they are unseated, they're the defending champions. So
there you go.
Montreal, they're destined. I just think there's something screwy going on. The stars are aligning, and they're destined. There's something going on there.
Yeah.
And can we all agree that there's nothing better in sports than playoff hockey?
Absolutely. And we've talked before, Neil, and I think you said that ESPN doesn't really cover too much hockey. That's like the least talked about sport. They touch on it.
It's going to be now because we bought into the rights, but our show talks about it. Me and Barry Melrose got a good little we got a good little thing going, and so hopefully we're able to keep that. And I'm excited for ESPN and what the future holds for the hockey coverage there, and hopefully I get to be a little bit a part of it.
Absolutely.
Well, I'd like to give a plug for Caitlin. She can make a grown man cry the way she questions. So if you need a hard-nosed reporter, she's in.
Well, I've told her that you put that tape and put that resume together, and we'll direct it in the right way.
That's awesome. Neil, thanks for being with us. This is great story, great information for young people who want to get into the business.
Rob, Caitlin, it was my pleasure. Thank you for having me, and we'll talk to you in the future.
All right. Thank you guys for joining the Rinkside Report again. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we'll catch you next week.